Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Today's session will be broken down into two segments. The first 20 minutes will be a presentation by Dr. Nirmala on today's topic, how do we improve the quality of teacher-child interactions in the preschool? And the next 40 minutes will be a panel discussion with our presenter and invited guests.
May we now invite Dr. Nirmala Karuppiah.
We will start today's session with a presentation by Dr. Nirmala Karuppiah. In the presentation, Dr. Nirmala will share her perspectives on the importance of teacher-child interactions and why they are important in the preschool curriculum. May I now invite Dr. Nirmala, please.
Good morning, everyone. Let me talk as my colleagues allow me to share my screen. All right. Thank you everyone for attending this session, and thank you to MENDAKI for this wonderful opportunity for me to share with you the research that I've done in the area of teacher-child interactions. So welcome everybody, and what I would be doing is to I'm going to present the outline, and I would appreciate if you keep your questions to the end of the presentation, because I've been only given a very short period of 20 minutes to do this presentation. So I'll try to be as focused as possible. So I'll try to keep to the slides, and thank you very much. So for this presentation, these are the areas that I'll be covering. I will start off with what are teacher-child interactions, and then I'll go on to talk about why are teacher-child interactions important to children in the preschool classroom. And next, I will be talking about how this quality of teacher-child interactions in the classroom can be measured. And finally, how do we improve the quality of teacher-child interactions in the preschool classroom? So with that, let me begin my session. I hope everybody is able to see and hear my presentation. Now, what are teacher-child interactions? I think this question was posed to you, and I'm waiting to see what your perceptions are about teacher-child interactions later in the after this presentation during the panel discussion. So let me share with you what teacher-child interactions mean in the research that I was involved in. So teacher-child interactions can be defined as the daily socially instructional exchanges teachers and children have throughout the day and every day. And this definition has been taken from Pienta and Hammeray's work. They are the people responsible for the tool that was used to measure teacher-child interactions in the classroom in the research that I was involved in. Okay, so let us go on to understanding how the quality of teacher-child interactions can be measured. So the quality of teacher-child interactions could be measured using classroom assessment scoring system. Now, I'll be using the word class for the rest of my presentation. Is the short form for classroom assessment scoring system. So what is class? Class is an observation tool developed to focus, measure, and improve teacher-child interactions in the classroom. Class assesses the classroom quality in 3 key domains. They are emotional support, classroom organization, and finally, instructional support. Let us look at what these 3 domains are all about. So for emotional support, what we are looking at is how the teacher supports children's social and emotional functioning in the classroom. For classroom organization, we are looking at how the teacher supports the classroom processes related to organization and management of children's behavior, time, and attention. And finally, in instructional support, we are looking at how teachers support children's cognitive and language development in the classroom. So let us look at each one of them in greater depth. So under emotional support, you have dimensions such as positive climate, negative climate, teacher sensitivity, and finally, regards for student perspective. For classroom organization, the dimensions are behavior management, productivity, and instructional learning formats. As for instructional support, the dimensions are concept development, quality of feedback, and finally, language modeling. Let us look at what these dimensions mean. So for emotional support, as I mentioned, the 4 dimensions are positive climate, negative climate, teacher sensitivity, and regards for the student perspective. So for positive climate, what we're looking at is the level of emotional connection, respect, and enjoyment demonstrated between the teachers and students and among children. So for example, we are looking at how, the kind of positive language the teachers use in the classroom. So if a teacher says thank you to the students of each time they do something for the teacher, or if they borrow something and they say thank you, or they ask very politely, may I borrow your pencil? Those things should be encouraged by the teacher in the classroom. And it is not just between teachers and students, but we also look at how children interact with each other in the classroom using positive language and respecting each other. Negative climate refers to the level of expressed negativity such as anger, hostility, or aggression exhibited by teachers and or children in the classroom. So for example, you may have teachers shouting at the children to keep quiet, or telling them not to fight or not to use bad language. She's shouting from one end of the classroom to the other end, and then you have children screaming at each other, snatching things from each other. All these will contribute to the negative climate in the classroom. Teacher sensitivity is about the level of teachers' awareness and responsivity to children's academic and emotional concerns. So for example, not all children learn at the same rate. So a teacher has to be very observant and has to look out for signs where children are struggling or they're unable to pay attention, or something that's bothering them and is interfering with their learning in the classroom. And finally, respect for student perspective refers to a level of emphasis placed on children's interests, motivations, and points of view during teachers' interactions with children and classroom activities. So for example, you have children asking questions and how teachers respond to them with respect, despite the fact that students may give the wrong answer, or they may give an answer that's irrelevant to the question that's been asked. So it is how teachers respect the child's views or responses and encourage the child to stay focused, or to help the child get to the topic that it is being discussed in the classroom. So these are the dimensions within the emotional support domain. Let's go on to the next domain, which is classroom organization. So the three dimensions are behavior management, productivity, and instructional learning formats. Let's look at each one of them individually. So in behavior management, we are looking at how the teacher effectively monitors, prevents, and redirects children's behavior. So for example, if there are two children, quarreling or fighting over a toy, the teacher could observe and move in, and maybe when the conflict is not resolved, the teacher could ask one of the two children and say, would you like to go to the other corner? I mean, look at that. You always wanted to try being a policeman, and now the dramatic corner is unoccupied. Shall we go over there and try the police uniform and pretend to be a policeman? So something like that, teachers could do to redirect children's behavior, or they could, talk to the two children and see how they can resolve the problem, maybe getting them to work together instead of fighting over the materials in a particular learning center. All right, let's look at productivity. Productivity refers to how well the teacher runs the classroom, including routines and how the teacher, organizes activities and directions so that maximum time can be spent in learning activities. So she doesn't have to spend all that time, telling children what to do, or getting children to transit from one activity to another. So this is an important area, and we look at how teachers run a smooth classroom. In instructional learning formats, we are looking at how teachers facilitate activities and provide interesting materials so that children are engaged and learning opportunities are maximized. So a teacher could plan an activity or set up a learning center where children can go in and work independently and be engaged either individually or in a small group, and she has to facilitate that. And sometimes children may want to work independently, so that activity must be such that children can work on their own. So now let's move on to instructional support. And in instructional support, there are three dimensions. They are concept development, quality of feedback, and language modeling. Let's look at each one of them individually. So for concept development, we are looking at how teachers use instructional discussions and activities to promote children's higher order thinking skills in contrast to a focus on rote instruction. So we want to move away from teacher-directed to child-centered activities. And we also want to ensure that our activities are not looking at just focusing on the right answer. We want to go beyond that and ask children questions that extend their thinking. And also, we don't want just a one-word answer. We want to ask them, we want to expand on their responses and, answer their question with a question so that it gets them thinking. And what we want to look at is the process of thinking rather than just the right answer. Quality of feedback. That refers to teachers extending children's learning through their responses to children's ideas, comments, and work. So if a child says, I'm interested in finding out how this machine works. So how does the teacher respond to that question or that idea? Does the teacher takes that, say, oh, let's go and read a book and find out a little bit more, or which machine are you in, or which toy are you interested in? Let's look at it and see how it works. So or the teacher may say, okay, maybe we could open up this toy and see what's inside this toy that makes it work. So questions like that help children to understand that their questions are not ignored, and their ideas can be expanded, and they can learn more from the teacher or together with the teacher. So teacher should not just answer, that's a good question. Yes, that's a good idea, but rather expand on it. Language modeling. How do teachers facilitate and encourage children's language? This is also very important because children are observing teachers on how they talk and their body language. So we need to ensure that children that we are good we model good language so that children pick up the right way of speaking, of presenting, and all. All right, so again, let's look at all the domains and dimensions altogether. And what happens next is that these dimensions under each domain can be further broken down. And in class, they have broken it down as follows. For each one of these, there are other 4 or 5 indicators. These are really minute details within each dimension, right? And so what happens is that each of these indicators is given a score, and these scores would be totaled up, and then they become a total score for that particular dimension. And then all the domains under that, all the dimensions under that domain will be totaled again, and a total score is given to the domain. So this is how scoring is done. A score of 1 to 7 is given to each indicator. And if there are few indications of that indicator, then a score of 1 or 2 is given, and that's considered a low range. If there are some indication of that indicator, then a score of 3, 4, or 5 is given, and this will be considered the mid-range. And finally, if there are many indications of that indicator, then a score of 6 or 7 is given, and that will be considered in the high range. All right, so the scoring is done at the indicator level, as I mentioned in the earlier slide. If I take you to the earlier slide, so scoring is done under this level, the indicator level, right? So in our research, what we found was that in the 3 domains that we looked at, the emotional support, the classroom organization, and instructional support, if teachers perform generally well, right, in the domain of emotional support and in the domain of classroom support. But when it came to the instructional support, teachers didn't perform too well in this area, right? And so the scores were high, generally mid to high for emotional and emotional support and classroom organization, but rather low for the instructional support. So what did we do with that, with those scores? So what we encourage teachers to do is to review and reflect on their own teaching and learning processes based on the scores. And of course, improve on their pedagogy and practice in the classroom, because it's important for teachers to know where they perform well and where they didn't perform so well, and to do something about it. So teachers at their level can do this, and at the NIE level, what we did was we worked with NIEC, and NIEC stands for the National Institute of Child Development. This is a teacher training institute located at NIE that does training for the diploma programs in the sector. So we worked with them and we developed some resources so that they can help us conduct courses that will help teachers improve in this particular area, which is the instructional support. And so what the package looks like is it contains little clips of what you call teacher resources or exemplars or video clips that will give teachers an idea of what good practices are. And in class, when you undergo class training, they tend to use the video clips that are found in the country of origin, which is the United States. Whereas we thought we should develop resources locally. So we got little video clips from classrooms found in preschools in Singapore. So they are little segments which show the good practices at the indicator level. So as teachers go through the lecture slide, they can also watch the videos to understand what each indicator would look like if we would like to promote positive practices in the classroom. It gives a visualization of what we mean by instructional support. You notice how the teacher asked the questions and got the children to think of the possible answers and the tone of her voice. If you notice, she was trying to show surprise and she was encouraging the children and giving children time. That's very important, giving children time to think and respond. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your kind attention.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Nirmala, for your enlightening presentation. We will now move on to the panel discussion segment of the program. Together with Dr. Nirmala, we have Madam Seri Rahayu and Mr. Faisal to join us for the panel discussion. May I please invite the panelists to turn on their webcams and microphones for the panel discussion? And before I pass the session to Mr. Faisal, may I remind all participants that if you have any questions during the segment, you may post them on Zoom's Q&A function. Also, we seek your cooperation to input your names before typing and asking your questions. Mr. Faisal, please.
Thank you, Farouk, for your kind introduction. Very warm welcome, everyone. My name is Faisal from the Research and Planning Department of Yayasan MENDAKI. We are now streaming live from Zoom and Facebook to cater to the overwhelming response. MENDAKI Education Symposium has indeed gone international this year with early childhood practitioners, researchers, and curriculum specialists from as far as Portugal and Australia. So a big and warm welcome, everyone. I'm very excited to begin. So let's deep dive into the topic on how we can improve our teacher-child interactions in the preschool classroom. So as all of you know, preschool teachers, principals, and policymakers, such as curriculum specialists, envision a classroom which is interactive, of high quality, and of course, fun within the curriculum. So as a former educator myself, we often face several challenges to fit all this into these criteria and checklists within the limited time frame. We have lesson plans and we have deliverables. So how do we balance all these requirements? So may I pose this first question to Madam Seri Rahayu. Madam Seri Rahayu is our ECDA fellow and a school leader. So Madam Seri Rahayu, can I ask what are the current ways to ensure the quality teacher interaction? And can you share with us the current practices to measure these quality interactions?
Okay, well, listening to what Dr. Nirmala has mentioned just now, I think the existence of having positive relationship in the class actually supports that quality interaction between the teacher and the children. Because as in human nature, when we want to build that relationship with a person, we want to find more information about the person so that in order to have the interaction, right? So in this case, it is the teacher. So for the teacher to be able to build that interaction with the children, the teacher would need to find more information about the child, right? With regards to the child's cognitive level, maybe with regards to the child's interests, likes or dislikes, and also about the learning style of the children in her class. So having that information about each and every one of the children in the class, she will then be able to set that expectation or standard for the children. So in order to achieve that, then she will need to actually adapt plan different strategies, methods to cater to the different needs of the diverse needs of the children in the classroom. So having said that, how do we measure quality relationship? It plays a very important part to the teacher itself. For me, it is that when the teacher is confident when she steps into the classroom, it's basically because that she knows what she's going to do with the children, together with the children for that day. She knows that she has prepared her lesson materials, and also she knows her children well. So when I visit class, when I visit centers and all, I'm being drawn to noise, not those kind of very loud noise and all, people talking loudly and all, but it is more of when I see children able to interact among themselves when they are actually doing their activities, when they are doing their projects, and they are able to have the interaction freely without being fearful of getting scolded by the teacher for having that for talking in class, right? And also for the teacher, it is that when I see the teacher engage in this group of children in a very relaxed manner, and it is not hurried, and the way how she asks questions to the children, it kinds of she has that patience to wait to elicit the responses from the children into the discussion. Because sometimes teachers, maybe they could be because of the time factor. They want to finish off a lesson very fast and things like that. So they tend to answer the questions that they ask the children. So the conversation between the teacher and the child, when she asks questions in the way that how she asks to elicit the responses from the children, speaks volume about the teacher. And also with regards to the teacher itself, right? And this can be done is basically because that she knows the children very well, and she can make that adaptation, to the flow of the activities or to the flow of the interaction according to the needs of the children.
Thank you, Madam Seri Rahayu, for those interesting comments on what teachers are expected to do and what are the ground sentiments. Thank you for sharing on that. Maybe I'll direct my next question and related to that to Dr. Nirmala. Dr. Nirmala, based on your experience, how realistic is it for teachers to exhibit all these dimensions at every observation session or at every time? And second question, if I may, how is class going to be implemented? What are the challenges for this implementation? Dr. Nirmala, please.
Thank you, Faisal, for the question. I'll start off with the first question first. Class uses all these fancy terms, I must say, but actually teachers are already doing some of these things in the classroom. It's not that they are not doing it. Maybe we call it by a different name, but nevertheless, I think sometimes teachers in their, maybe, they've got a very tight curriculum or, a tight schedule for that day. And so sometimes they're very focused on meeting the objectives that they forget about the process of teaching and learning. So I think teachers need to review the schedule or the curriculum and see and make time for this, for example, for instructional support, the Q&A. Yeah? When they ask children questions, they need to wait sometimes for children to think and articulate, because children are very young, sometimes they don't have the language. So they have to think of the correct words to use or the right words to use to articulate their thoughts and ideas. So teachers need to wait for that answer. Or even if they are the child is taking a bit, the teachers can scaffold that learning, try and ask, prompting, prompt the child with some cues or question. But all that takes time. So if you have a very tight schedule for that day or for that particular activity, then you don't have that time to listen to the child. So you'll be rushing and then either giving the right answer right away, or or telling the child wrong, and then and say go to the next child. So that is a bit problematic. Then the other things, sometimes teachers, the kind of question teachers ask are also very important. So instead of asking, if you have that Bloom's taxonomy of questions, ask questions like, tell me, give me that yes or no or true or false answers, one word answers. We want to move away from that. Not that they are wrong, we can ask that, but all our questions in our activity shouldn't be just that kind of one word answers. It should be questions that get the child to think. So like the why questions, rather than does this work or not, but rather, why do you think it is working? That sort of inquiry questions. And so that will promote children's higher order thinking skills. And which, of course, we hope that the child gives the grant, but if the child doesn't give grant, we can scaffold the child's learning towards it. And all, like I said, again, it takes time. So we need to find the time in our daily activities to ask questions, and maybe different questions for different children on different days. So we spread it out so that we can still do our work and yet, make time for this instructional support to take place in our classroom. So yes, so initially it might be challenging for teachers, but I think once teachers make it a habit to ask the sort of question, children get used to it, parents get used to it, and everybody gets used to this sort of questioning. I'm just giving an example of using questions as an example under instruction. There are many examples, but I'm just using this. Then you develop the culture of Q&A, the way of doing Q&A to promote critical thinking skills, promoting children to not just give one-word answers, but to articulate the ideas, and use longer sentences. This also helps in language development.
So moving from just the what questions to more focus on the why, I think that's very important. And I'm sure that every teacher here, be it at secondary school, primary, or even preschool, when you say take time, that's the issue, that's a challenge, right? Everyone wants to be more efficient, whether this is efficient versus effectiveness of the teaching and the conversations and dialogues.
And then going on to your second question about how we hoping to roll out this. So we didn't just stop at conducting this large-scale research project. What we did was we took the findings and we developed a learning resources package, and we have collaborated with NIEC, and we have developed these resources and passed it on to them. So they will be conducting PD workshops for in-service teachers, and we hope that in-service teachers will participate in this PD workshops and help develop this positive practices and pedagogies in the preschools. So they are NIEC in the process of developing these PD workshops for the sector.
Okay, that's very good to hear that we are making a lot of building and developing a lot of resources for teachers. I think they need the assistance and help because of time as well. So maybe I would like to take this opportunity to take a look at our Mentimeter, the first question that you asked earlier at the beginning of your session, to see what our audience members think. So we will open up, also for your information, ladies and gentlemen, we'll open up the session for viewers to ask questions live. So get ready your question and your microphones. We are not going to go on visual, but more on the microphone. So let's get back to the Mentimeter and see what are the answers. So what words come to mind when you think of teacher-child interaction? So we have a very big words such as understanding, respect, communication, meaningful, and trust. Let's go back to Madam Seri Rahayu, and then we'll go to Dr. Nirmala Madam Seri Rahayu, are you surprised that there's a focus on bonding, respect, understanding, and communication?
And actually, these are the very common terms that for the educators to use, because, like, you know, we understand that when interaction happens, for interaction to happen, they need the understanding of the children and where they are and how we are able to scaffold them to another level. The respect is something in which that it also is also part of the contribution towards that interaction, right? Because when you respect the child, you know, when there is this classroom, when there is this balance, the equitable relationship between the teacher and the child, right? It gives the children the opportunity, the teacher gives the children that opportunity to actually, gives that opportunity for the children to be able to express his or her opinions freely, and to make the child feel that, you know, the child is being valued of his opinion or ideas. You know, and in terms of what is the next one? Communication. Communication, it is very important, because without good communication, without developing the children on their language skills, the quality interaction between the teacher and the child would have an impact towards that development, or towards that quality interaction, teacher-child interaction in class.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Seri Rahayu, for your observation and explanation on why teachers are looking at these aspects. I think this is very interesting. Based on the class framework, we see that a lot of these words, respect, understanding, are all going towards emotional support under the domain emotional support, whereas we see quite the very limited words under instructional support. Maybe I can ask, I can direct this question to Dr. Nirmala. Dr. Nirmala, are you surprised that most of the answers are into the domain of emotional support as compared to instructional support?
Yes, in fact, this was the very finding that we found in the research. So yes, I think our classroom, teachers are in our classroom in Singapore are generally providing the emotional support, as well as class. They practice very good classroom organization and manage the class very well. But we want teachers to move to the next level of providing instructional support for children, and this is the area that I think we need to work on. And there's one, I agree with Rahayu in what she said about those areas and the examples she gave and all. I think yes, they are really very important for providing that classroom environment for even instructional support to take place. But there's one word that appeared, but it disappeared as the Mentimeter was moving on. So there's this word reciprocal, which I like to also touch on, because I may have given the interpretation or that teacher-child interactions means the teacher interacting with the child. When I mean teacher-child, I also mean child interacting with the teacher. So the examples I gave may appear like teacher asking children questions, but children should be also encouraged to ask the teacher questions. And that is really important, because children also learn when they ask questions, not always waiting for the teacher to ask them questions in order to learn. That's very important. And another thing I would also like to highlight is that teachers should also encourage children to ask other children questions, so that so teacher-child interaction is a big term, but it encompasses child-teacher interaction as well as child-child interactions, because children can learn from each other as well. And in Vygotsky's theory, as I think most early child educators are familiar with, children can learn from other more knowledgeable children as well. So we also need to, teachers will also need to encourage that. So we need to get children to, not always working alone, but working in groups, collaborating with each other, learning from each other.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nirmala. So I'm going to go quickly to the question and answers box here. We have several questions. I'll pick 2 questions, and just for information for the viewers, we will actually answer all your questions via email as well. So please register for those who have not. So let's quickly go on to a question by Camila Salim. She asks, if you rank the dimensions, which would you impart to the educators first? So she's asking whether there is a hierarchy of domains on dimensions. Dr. Nirmala?
Oh, okay. All right, sure. So I think since teachers are generally doing quite well in the areas of emotional support in classroom, then as I mentioned earlier, I think we need to move on to focusing on instructional support. And instructional support, although there are 3 dimensions, the concept development, language, language modeling, and quality feedback, there are 3 dimensions. Actually, they are not independent of each other. If you notice in that one little video clip, that video clip doesn't just cover one dimension or one indicator. It comprises, in fact, all 3 dimensions and all the indicators under each dimension. So we really hope that although as we are learning, each of those dimension or each domain or each dimension or each indicator, we need to understand that they all interact with each other and they can happen at the same time.
Okay, I think that's a very...
Yeah, so I would encourage really, I mean, this is, once teachers are aware that this is an area that they need to look at, I really encourage teachers to really, work with each other. Either, if they feel comfortable working on their own, they can videotape their session and then look at it and see, wait, where is the area that I need to work on? Or they can get a partnering teacher to work with them, and then they can sit down and observe each other's teaching and share feedback. I think these are some ways. The other ways would be, of course, to attend one of those PD workshops that will be made available soon, and then pick up some skills, come back, practice, and then they can also either do it individually, reflect and review individually, or work with a partnering teacher or a mentor.
Thank you, Dr. Nirmala. Just one more question to maybe Madam Seri Rahayu. We have someone who's asking, the video shows the preschool that is more upscale. So how about more typical preschools, right? So maybe we can ask Madam Seri Rahayu first and then Dr. Nirmala. So are the examples shown equitable to all preschools? Madam Seri Rahayu?
Okay, yeah. Whether the child is in a so-called upscale school or in a typical normal preschool, the lies is in fact lies with the teacher. How the skills of the teacher to actually plan out the activities for the children in the class. So again, when she knows her children well, the way how she plans her activities to ensure that it is appropriate, it is able to cater to the needs, and also to actually the way how they ask the question, the teacher asks the children questions to actually draw out the responses from the teacher. So it is not a matter of whether the child is in an upscale school or not, or in a typical school. It is how the way the teacher make use of the resources, how the way the teacher facilitates that lesson plays a very important part in giving out the most or the same desirable outcome that we have seen in the video.
So regardless of preschool?
Yes, it is the teacher.
Thank you. Dr. Nirmala, your thoughts on a perceived differentiation or differences between preschools?
Spot on. I totally agree with Rahayu. It is not whether it's a high-end or a mid-end or a low-end preschool. I think it is the teacher who makes the difference in the classroom. And to be very honest with you, the video clip that I took of that teacher, it is a religious kindergarten. And it is one of those, what you would class, this particular preschool would be classified not at a high end, charging high fees. It is one of those preschool located in a HDB estate. So it is, if you have to put it in one of those categories of, looking at the SES group that kindergarten caters to, it is somewhere from low to middle rather than high. Although there may be a few children from the high, from the high SES, but generally it is low to mid, and the fees are pretty low. And the difference in that preschool from another preschool is that this particular preschool, the teachers the principal emphasizes a lot on teacher training, and both in-house and also from external agencies, but they do a lot of partnering and giving each other feedback. So they do a lot of that, and I think that really helps in teachers developing the knowledge, skills, and disposition that they need to help children.
And I'm sure with professional development, we will level up the competencies and experiences of these teachers.
Yes, definitely. I think no harm getting extra help in identifying what sort of, where is the, that's why this preschool came forward to participate very willingly, because they were open to feedback. They wanted to know how they can improve. And whenever, even when they have visitors in the preschool, at the end of the visit or tour, they always ask the visitors, I know it looks good, but I'm sure there's some areas, so what is that area of improvement? Can you please tell us? So having an open mind, being open to feedback really helps in progressing. So I think this is one important factor that really made this teacher come, progress to this level.
Right. So we'll now go on to open the session to one or two of our viewers. We have I think, from the screen, we have Pamela Kong. Pamela Kong, are you ready with your question? We're going to unmute you. Hi, Pamela. Hi, Pamela, are you online? Pamela, you are muted. Could you unmute yourself, please? So maybe we can have another viewer who is interested in asking the questions live. Okay, we're waiting for questions to be sent to, okay, we have one. Okay. Okay. Okay, maybe we'll go on to the next question on the Q&A. Right, so there's this question by Michelle Lee. If the teacher is engaging a big group, how can the teacher be able to engage individuals with various constraints, especially time? I think that's a pertinent question that all teachers have. Yeah, so maybe we'll go to Seri Rahayu, please. So if we have a big group, how can the teacher be able to engage individuals with the various constraints?
I think it is about planning, right? How the teacher actually plans time with the children in the class when she is actually wanting to do the activities. Because for children, some children, they are very actually good at, generally they are okay to be able to grasp, the things that it is being taught by the teacher. But some children, they just need a little bit more time or a little bit more assistance from the teacher. So the planning part of, when the teacher is able to, sit together with the child and to actually reinforce some of the concept or some of the skills that she actually taught together in a large group, that it is like, the planning, like in terms of like, when she's able to draw out the child to sit together and to actually reinforce on certain skills or concepts in which that she thinks that the children may not be able to grasp together with the rest of the children. So that is where, like, in the classroom itself, teachers will plan for differentiated activities, for the children to play. So be it apart from the one-to-one, the activities that she has set at the learning centers, also plays a part in actually, like, making sure that the children are able to be able to understand, what she is trying to give to the children.
Right.
It is about planning. I think it's about planning of time. That the teacher
planning
has.
and of time, yeah. Doing whatever we can. It's not about only quantity, but also quality of the interactions within a short period of time, yeah? Yes. So going back to Dr. Nirmala, I mean, the video that you shared with us was between one teacher is to two. So imagine if one teacher is to 20 students. your reactions or based on your observations?
Thank you for that question. Okay, I have to agree with Rahayu about what she said about planning. I think it's really very important. So within that classroom, the teacher could have, a large group session. She could have small group sessions. She could have paired activities. She could have individual activities. And the activities should be planned in such a way that while some children are in the learning centers working independently, the other children could be, a small group of children could be with her, or even a few children could be with her, and she could be doing this sort of activity with their children. Or she could put them all in different learning centers, and she could walk around and help children. So I think it goes back to what she said about planning. And also I'd like to highlight that, although in that video clip, I focus on that teacher talking to that 2 children, in fact, that it was a large classroom with about 15 to 20 children there. And what she did was she broke them up into different learning centers, doing different activities, and she was focusing with just that 2 children for that video session. But she moved on to the next group, a next group, a next group, and as she was moving around, she was interacting with the children. So it is possible if, as what Rahayu has mentioned, the teacher plans that session well. So you can, I think it's important for teachers to have a variety of activities for different children. And as Rahayu has also mentioned, differentiated activities for different, because some children may know certain concepts and already know some of these, are familiar with this activity. So they can work independently, or you could have one experienced child working with less experienced children. And then while she is focusing on other children that may need her help. So I think all this, again, depends on planning as well as time. So the teacher needs to make the best use of that time given. And I think, Faisal, you mentioned a very important, let's not go for quantity, let's go for quality. So there's no point going in 20 activities and they're all not effective. Why not just have a few activities which are so effective that children learn more than if they went through 20 activities? So,
that's right.
Yes.
I think is Pamela Kong online? If you are, you can unmute yourself. If you are not, then we'll go on to the next question. I think, let's go on to the next question then. I think in terms of understanding the context of COVID-19, so we have one question with that. How do you build a positive emotional connection with students in the case of the situation where you need to have a social distance? So I think that's a very good question. How do you make that connection? Maybe we can ask
Rahayu,
Dr.
you want to go first?
Rahayu first, yes.
Or you want me to take that question, Rahayu?
It's okay. Maybe I just touch briefly.
Yes, please,
okay.
go ahead.
With regards during the COVID, during the learning, during the COVID period, where some of the centers actually has this does not provide that learning service for the parents. Some centers do, but what we did was to actually create that home-based learning for the children, right? So in order to get that connection with the children still when they are at home, parents. So in terms of when we have that home-based learning, we felt that although we have this the parents are very supportive in terms of completing whatever projects that we have, that we want the parents to do together with the children. There are also those cringe moments where we see that because parents, they tend to take video of their process that they do together with the children. So there are also some cringe moments where we look at the video and then we start to say that maybe the approach it is not so appropriate to complete the project. But then again, because parents, they may not be able to know about the appropriate ways of completing the thing, completing the project in an appropriate way. But then it does have that kind of relationship that the child has with the parents, because the parents tends to be more aware about the children's learning. But also in class also, even though with the safe distancing, we practice safe distancing inside the class and all, but it does not actually stops the children from having that deprive the children of any social emotional the social interaction among each other, because lessons still can continue.
Right.
The children are still engaged in the activities, but it is just a matter of like the planning again on the teachers, whereby like, you know, instead of doing it in a very large group together, you know, she will then need to break up into certain sessions to actually get the children to be involved in it. So the children are also mindful about, hey, you are not, you know, the social distancing takes into effect at all times, you know, but it does not deprive the children of having that social interaction, because they still talk, they still laugh, they still participate in music and movement and all.
Right. Right, Dr. Nirmala, your thoughts on
I
how to
agree
build
with
a positive...
Rahayu again. I think many centers have done different things to try and help children and their families during this difficult, challenging period. So yes, I think it's very challenging to maintain that social and emotional support that they usually would give in a non-COVID situation. I agree. It's not the same. I agree with you. It's not the same. But nevertheless, we try our best and we explain to children why they have to maintain that social distancing. And it's an adjustment both on the teacher's part, the child's part, and even the parents have to adjust to that. So I believe that, you know, nothing can replace that human touch, you know, especially in the early years. It's so important for that teachers, you know, to give that child a hug, or the child to give the teacher a hug, or give another child a hug. I think all these are really important, but given this challenging period, we have to maintain that. So we make the adjustment, and children are surprisingly are very good at adjusting to new situations. I think it's we adults who are more concerned about these issues, but I think children adjust very quickly, and they know that they've been, you know, I'm sure things would pick up and we'll get back to the normal. But we also need to accept that there's a new normal, and now with, you know, new gadgets and all the new screen devices, another big area. I don't want to go deep into it, but I think this is going to be the new normal in future, where we would be doing a lot of virtual teaching and learning, and maybe this is one way to prepare for the future, to prepare our children for the future teaching and learning processes. So but of course, I mean, I'm sure everybody misses, you know, the old normal, and we like to go back to the old normal. Thank you.
Because the beginning part, you know, when the children comes back to school, they are playing catching. The children trying to catch the teacher, and the teacher is like, okay, where's the safe distancing? How do I put it across to it?
I think they miss the physical interactions as well.
Yes,
I'm sure.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Nirmala and Madam Seri Rahayu, for your interesting comments and insights. I think we are very appreciative of that. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of today's session, and I just want to share with the viewers that all your questions that have been put in the Q&A box, we will answer them. So just wait for, we will give the questions to our panelists, and then they will answer on our behalf as well. So before we move on, or before I go, I just want to say thanks and gratitude to our friends from NLB. We have recommended 3 books that are related to improving the quality of teacher-child interactions. The first one is Play Responsive Teaching in Early Childhood Education. This is a very interesting book that could be very useful to curriculum planners as well as researchers. For the next one, we have the Everyday Playfulness, a new approach to children's play and adult responses to it, is by Stuart Lester. And this is more of the practitioner's perspective. I think this is very good for your reading as well. And the last book is The Parent Backpack for Kindergarten through Grade 5. And of course, this is for our parents. So different titles for different groups or segments. And you'll be happy to note that the last book, which is The Parent Backpack, is available on ebook. So you can just go down to NLB, you go to the website and download it. So I think, dear viewers, I hope you have enjoyed today's session and picked up several strategies and tips on how we teach our children to be, and how we guide the children. So I do encourage you to attend the next session, which is today actually from 3 to 4 p.m. The title is How Do We Help Children Feel Safe and Ready to Learn by Dr. Anne Rifkin. So once again, thank you so much for your time. Over to you, Farouk.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, panelists, for that insightful discussion. Before we end today's session, may we invite the Senior Manager of MENDAKI's Research and Planning Department, Mr. Faisal, to join the panelists for a photo-taking session. May I please invite you to turn on your webcams for us to take a screenshot? All right. Okay, on the count of 3, please smile and we will take a screenshot. 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay, Ken, thank you. With that, we have come to the end of our session. We would like to thank Dr. Nirmala Karuppiah, Madam Seri Rahayu, and Mr. Faisal Aman for joining us this morning. We hope you enjoyed today's session and gained valuable insights from the presentation and discussion. For any unanswered questions on the Q&A function you have shared earlier, we will do our best to address and reply them through email. Before we end today's session, we would like to invite early childhood professionals to be part of the MENDAKI Alliance of Preschool Professionals, MAPP. The MAPP is a platform for members to extend their current network and share their knowledge and skills with other early childhood professionals and educators through various events and activities. You may visit the link or scan the QR code for more information. We would also like to invite interested participants to volunteer with MENDAKI in our class Mathematica program. Visit the link or scan the QR code for more information. For us to improve future sessions, we would appreciate if you could also take some time to respond to our feedback survey. You may visit the link or scan the QR code to access the survey. Kindly be reminded that our third session, How Do We Help Children Feel Safe and Ready to Learn, by Dr. Anne Rifkin-Graboy, will be held later today at 3 p.m. Till then, thank you and see you again. Goodbye.